What's in the box? Oh God, what's in the box? Seven. Pretty much every review on YouTube probably has someone doing that. So I thought I'd get it out of the way sooner rather than later. Seven is the movie that I'm going to be reviewing today. 1995 film from David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. A very popular film. It's really kind of stayed on the radar for a long time. A lot of people cite it as probably their favorite film. And I was checking the movie recently on IMDb. I saw it. This surprised me. It's number, at least currently as I'm doing this video, number 22 on top 250 films ever. Not sure I would agree with that, but I mean that just kind of goes to show how popular it is, how well acclaimed it is. So yeah, I mean, it's got to say something about it, and I am a fan of the film. I love the film. I've seen it so many times, and it always affects me every single time I watch it. I did just recently watch it again after not having seen it for a couple of years. Oh man, oh boy, it's something. And there's probably debate of whether you could classify it as a thriller or a horror. Probably both. But I mean, this movie has horrifying elements. It's about a demented serial killer, killing according to the seven deadly sins. So I mean, obviously, it's pretty out there, and it's pretty gruesome, and it's a scarring and traumatizing film. It really is. So definitely this is something that I wanted to do a review for. So what better time than October? As you can see here, I do have the DVD. I'd like to get the Blu-ray. I'm absolutely positive it must look amazing, incredible on Blu-ray, but I'm still kind of holding out for say a 20th anniversary Blu-ray set, something like well worth it. And oh my God, 20 years? This movie's 20 years old? Whatever. But you can get like a Blu-ray probably pretty cheaply, almost anywhere. But it's a lost art doing such cool artwork, or like cover set design kind of for a DVD release. Like this is really something cool. It's a New Line Platinum series. As you can see, I bought this probably 2001, 2002. So it's seen some time, but it's so cool. It comes out like the John Doe notebook, which is really cool, and it like kind of opens like the book, so you can kind of see it. It's just really cool. Like I'll give you a closer look in case you haven't seen it. Just if I can talk about the DVD set just a little bit. So isn't that cool? Isn't that gruesome and terrifying there? Really a representation of the movie itself. So it really reflects the movie, I think. And you don't see that too much. So I really love this DVD set, if I can talk about it a little bit. But the movie itself, of course, I'm a big fan of Fincher, so, and of Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, actually. And just in general, I really love, the kind of serial killer, cops after them kind of movies. So I'm definitely a big fan of that type of material. So right away, this is right up my alley. I must have seen it the first time maybe when I was like 12 or 13 years old. So definitely a scarring movie, definitely something that stayed with me, and something that I keep coming back to. There is something about this movie, so hopefully I can try to explain what I like about it, why it is as good as it is, and why other people feel that way, why it may be so high up in movie fans' favorite films. And of course, general plot. You have this serial killer killing people after the seven deadly sins. You have the two cops, the two detectives, I should say. You have the one who's just days away from retirement. In fact, 7 days away from retirement. That's Morgan Freeman playing Detective Somerset. And you have the young up-and-coming cop who's trying to make his name, get his cred. That's Brad Pitt playing Detective Mills. And it's those two, and of course, the serial killer is toying with them, but at the same time respects them, as we learn. And when you step back from this movie, like looking at that plot and seeing how it unravels, and how very, very intricately woven it is, and how everything depends on a specific thing that these characters have to do, and that the killer had to plan so specifically. If you step back from it, it is kind of silly. it is kind of just, what it really does. This movie almost throws like every cliche in the book that you could think of. I mean, it is 20 years old, but even at that time, the obsessed cops, the criminals who are toying with them, who but also respect them, and finding like a middle ground. That's been cliched forever. So I mean, definitely even at the time, it was playing with a lot of cliches. So if you step back from it, I don't think the movie quite works that well. But the thing is, you're not supposed to. At least I don't think. Honestly don't think you were supposed to, or what David Fincher intended with this movie. You're not supposed to look at this like a realistic depiction of police procedural. Absolutely not. This is more. It is kind of like a surreal movie. Like, it is such a dark and moody movie, almost like this kind of modern expressionism, where it's always dark. It's always rainy. Nothing is quite clear. Everything's obstructed, and the characters are looking within their own darkness, and the darkness within the world, and that kind of good stuff. And really, what it boils down to is the Mills and Somerset characters, where they are in their careers, in their lives, and dealing with this insane killer, and these horrific crimes. Kind of what they deal with is their own perspectives at where they are, and their points in their lives. The Somerset character, he's the seen it all kind of guy. He's the kind of just jaded kind of character who can't be happy enough to be retiring. He's just done with it. But the Brad Pitt character, the Mills, Detective Mills, he's still young, still eager. He wants to make a difference. He knows he can do some good in the world, and that's why he specifically wanted to transfer to this particular precinct. Which another thing about the movie is I don't believe that they specifically let us know what city, what state, where in the world this is. It could be New York, could be LA, could be Detroit. Who knows where it really is? I mean, unless I could be wrong, maybe they specifically say where it is, but that all adds to the surrealism of the movie. And so really what it boils down to, though there is, the regular kind of what you'll see, the police procedural, the obsessed cop kind of stuff. This is a movie where they'll stop and talk about it. They'll stop and discuss the morality behind everything, and kind of their perspectives on the world. So it gets pretty, philosophical almost with their viewpoints of the world. There are quite a few scenes where they have these very intense conversations with each other. So it's almost as if they're like Igmar Bergman characters or something like that. So it's kind of one of those kinds of movies, but it's obviously a more modern type of movie with a more modern setting, more modern police technology that they're able to use. So I think it all plays out really well. And again, it's just such an intricately woven thing. Like with the first murder that occurs, the gluttony murder. You see that horrific image. It's burned in your mind. You can see from the perspective of Mills and Somerset when they're walking in, the back of this fat man doesn't even fit in the chair. All pale, looks like he's been just pushed to the limit, basically, of eating all the food, because that was the killer's plan to make him eat to death and then display his gluttony sign. So to kind of display that, so that he wants them to find everything in a very specific way, and they find greed next with the lawyer. They find sloth next with that one character who's been chained to the bed. So there's just all these horrific images, like out of nightmarish images. And with that scene, the sloth murder is just, oh my god, horrifying. And again, it's like there are little details about the movie that make it stand out. Like, you can recall, like, the pine fresheners hanging from the ceiling when they find the semi-corpse. But of course, he's not technically a corpse, and he's been chained to that bed, or tied or strapped to that bed for a whole year, and just been deteriorating until he looks like a mummy, and they think he's dead. And then he coughs, and it makes John C. McGinley stand up and get shocked, like, what the fuck. So it's intense. That scene and well, by the way, I should stop right here. There's going to be spoilers in this review, so please be warned that I will spoil everything about the movie. Well, not everything, but you know what I mean. Then there's of course the lust murder. There's the pride murder, and wrath and envy, or envy and wrath. I guess they go in that order. But it's all according to this plan, and so they're kind of moving to catch this killer. And that's another thing that's interesting about the movie, is to see these two characters, two different methods of how to research. Like, obviously with the Morgan Freeman character, he is a very intelligent, very strong character, who knows literature, and he spends his nights at the library researching, because that's kind of the angle that the killer is taking. Dante's work, and you see him in the library. Meanwhile, and I think this is such a crucial point to the movie, because they're getting to know each other, but what we realize during that point in the movie, and this is maybe about 30 minutes in, we're getting to know the characters too. So we're kind of developing, whether it is on a very conscious level where we're like, okay, yeah, this is happening, or very unconscious level. We're developing an opinion on these characters, and we're deciding if we like them or not. And kind of one of the moments for me was just, I thought it was, I don't know, just a sweet moment. The Mills character, he's tries so hard to keep up with Somerset, and then he gets the Cliff's Notes of the books that Somerset has been reading. So it's a tiny scene like that I thought was just so good. And you kind of you feel a little bit sorry for the Mills character. You're like, oh, bless him, he's trying. So I really love this scene like that. This is all a movie about little details, and again, kind of a more character-driven type of movie. Like, this isn't. Again, not like a very realistic display of a serial killer. This exists as a movie, as a fictional movie, as a surreal movie, as a frightening movie with a very specific type of plot. Where of course it's gonna go according to the plan that the killer has planned, but really the writer has planned. So I mean, like it's really all about how these characters, they're seeing bad in the world, and the killer is showing it right in front of them, because in his mind, these victims aren't really victims at all. So you can find a flaw with every single one. You can find a deadly sin with every single one. So that's I think an important aspect to it, that these aren't just innocent people. These are people that, from a certain perspective, may possibly deserve it. So that's something that they struggle with as well. And, what it does boil down to, and, well, it is, absolutely, one of those, are the cops and criminals really the same kind of thing? It is about these two characters, with these two different types of perspectives, with these two different types of goals, ultimately, with the work that they're doing. It's them confronting that, confronting the evil in the world, and kind of deciding, do we beat on? Do we keep going? So it's a pretty wrenching and philosophical movie, I've found. So it ultimately goes to where the big money scene is, where the grand reveal of this killer is, and it was a surprise to me when I saw Kevin Spacey playing John Doe, the killer, and there's the great final act where he sets in front of them kind of what the game plan is. He's like, there's two more bodies, and I'll I'll plead guilty right now. Just come out with me to the desert. We'll go get them, or I'll plead insanity right now, and you'll lose everything. And so as they are in these types of movies, they are the obsessed cops trying to get everything together, and they want to bring the criminal to justice, because that's how they are. Again, it all leads up to this brilliantly. Like there is a pretty standard chase scene leading up to it, where we don't see the killer just yet. We don't see John Doe just yet. We see him kind of like obscured in the shadows, and there's the chase with Brad Pitt, and he breaks his fucking face, and their conversations that they have in the bar, again, talking about the world. Again, they're very, philosophical kind of characters that, normally these are purely film characters. And there's also a really great scene, and I think another key scene in the movie that, all kind of leading up towards the end, and where we decide about the characters, and kind of, what we decide about the Somerset character, and kind of how he really feels about the world. Maybe he isn't quite as jaded as he leads on. There's that great scene with Gwyneth Paltrow, who's plays Mills' wife. She reveals that she's pregnant. She has no one to talk to about it except for Somerset, because they moved to this new city and everything. And there's a great and really touching scene between the two of them where, he reveals kind of what happened in his past with a girlfriend of his, and just not wanting to bring a child into the world, and not wanting to expose it to the horror of the world. And in so many ways, he's sort of convincing her to keep the child, because she's not sure at that point. You spoil that child every chance you get if you decide to keep it. She's so moved by that. You see her breaking down. And Gwyneth Paltrow's performance actually is, often goes, kind of unsighted, and what's so great about this movie. But she's absolutely great. But she kind of disappears in the last act, obviously, where it is dominated by Kevin Spacey. So at that point, we've gotten to know the characters as much as we can. It's Spacey who dominates the last act of the movie. Absolutely, it's his platform. This is exactly what John Doe wants. This is exactly what the character's plan is. He wants this platform. Again, why it happens to be with these two specific cops who he just respects so much. Yeah, it's somewhat of a contrivance, sure, but that's what the movie's all about. That's how it's woven together. I don't see any issue with that. Why it's so, specific and all coincidental, and everything leads perfectly to this, master plan. So of course, at this point in the movie, we have the two final sins left: envy and wrath. And you know what the ending is. If you're watching this, If I hope. If you haven't seen the movie, you're not watching this. This is a review for people who've watched the movie, if that makes sense. The ending is absolutely devastating. Of course, his plan is that he is the person who's committed envy. He must be punished for that. Who better to punish him than the person he wronged, essentially, by him doing the final act, which is committing the sin of wrath. So, he envied Detective Mills's life. He wanted a wife like his, and he couldn't do it, and he took a souvenir, her pretty head, and that's in the box, and the box is brought by the courier, and that's when it goes, what's in the box, what's in the box? Oh, it's so horrible. So that's what it all leads to, and it is devastating. It is a punch in the gut, this ending, absolutely. It's just fucking devastating, this ending. I've seen this movie probably, I'd say I've seen it maybe 40 times, honestly. That ending just gets to me every single time. It is brutal, absolutely brutal. So, and kind of the thing that may be debated about this movie, and what's, I think, good for discussion, ultimately, why I would hope there are other people who will, go in front of the camera like this and talk about it. Mills, he's not able to, sustain his anger, and yes, he shoots and kills John Doe, and so he commits the final act of wrath. He lets John Doe win, much to, the pleas of Somerset. It's like, no, if you do it, he'll win. Please, if you murder a suspect, they'll go down. They'll come down on you, basically. And he does it. He shoots him dead, and John Doe is dead, exactly according to plan. So that's, a movie where the villain essentially wins. His master plan goes accordingly. The heroes don't stop it. So that's very much something that's, scarring about the film. That sticks with you, that leaves you with this empty feeling. And, you see the ending with, Brad Pitt being kind of taken away. You kind of think about what may happen with this character. Probably could plead temporary insanity, something like that, but his fucking wife is dead, so, that's that. So, it kind of puts you in a position where, you know, where do we find these characters now? After the whole movie, they're, you know, discussing their whole philosophies about what's good in the world. Certainly, I mean, with the Mills character, I mean, if he thought the world was such a good place, thought he could save it, I mean, he certainly, you know, disproved himself. But I think, you know, the tiny glimmer of hope, the candle in the dark of this movie is the Somerset character, where, you know, I think he doesn't quite feel the itch to retire any longer. He doesn't feel quite jaded. He feels that need to beat on, basically. And, you know, it ends with that quote, which maybe some people have a little bit of a qualm with, because there is no narration in this movie except at the very end, where he does the quote Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a good place and is worth fighting for." I agree with that second part. That's his quote. And sure, that does get you thinking about the movie and where both characters have been. So with Mills, the world is a good place. With Somerset, yeah, it's worth fighting for, I guess, is what it ultimately leads to. But, you know, there is hope in kind of what is suggested with this character. And that's, you know, where are you going to be? I'll be around. So I like that. And that gives me hope. That final line that's not narration from the Somerset character. I'll be around. So I think that says a lot without, you know, being over, you know, explicit about, you know, where the character has found himself. But it's quite a journey for these two characters, and it's not, you know, a chipper movie. It is a dark movie, a scarring movie, as only David Fincher could do. I think, you know, he led this revolution in, you know, what we can kind of see as like a thriller horror entertainment. By doing it so perfectly, having like the A grade, you know, actors, and yeah, obviously you've seen this movie replicated and tried to be, you know, matched. You know, there's a movie that came almost like right after Resurrection, even like The Bone Collector was kind of similar to this, and needless to say, Saw kind of took a good amount of influence, but nothing can quite top Seven, I think. So I think it's a great film. So high on IMDb? I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe not quite that high, but I mean, it definitely deserves mention. And one, you know, David Fincher's best movies. Two, best movies of the '90s. Three, yeah, I'd say best, you know, horror thrillers, best movies of that type. So I think it's well worth catching. So if you haven't seen it, I've ruined the movie. But I would hope, you know, maybe this leads to discussion. You know, what do you think about the ending? Do you think, you know, while the killer did somewhat win, do you think there's still hope in, you know, the Somerset character? I really think so. Interestingly, there is an alternate ending, which you can see storyboarded on the DVD, where he basically beats Mills to the punch, and he shoots John Doe instead of Mills, where it's like, okay, yeah, a little bit of a twist. Okay, so he fucked up the villain's plan just a little bit. I think that's an interesting ending. That would have like made me feel a little bit better, you know, a little happier. That at least there's something like that. But maybe that would have been a little bit too much of a victory. This is not a movie about large victories. This is a movie about, you know, characters looking internally as well as out into the world that they see. You can only see the world through your own perspective, so it's kind of important, you know, how you see it and what you're going to do about it. So, you know, is the world a good place? Is it worth fighting for? I agree with that second part. So thanks for watching. It's been my review of Seven. Rambled on for quite a bit now. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, and more 31 Days of Horror reviews to come. Stay tuned for that. See you later.